Now, of course, when we do appraisal fairs, this is original intake, first impression, what we can tell by what we can see. I might take a moment's break to look up something or try to verify something. But of course, this isn't the same as a formal appraisal where you would have a written report and be using it for insurance or things. What we're going to try to do is tell the folks here approximately the retail value of what they have and what the qualities are that make it interesting to people, hear their stories about how they got it, and we'll just have a good time and see what people have.
So my appraisal item sits right behind you, George.
Yes, it's wonderful. I noticed it when I walked in here. And tell me how you got it and what you know about it.
I got it just south of Columbus, Ohio. And this guy, he had a mansion of a house. He was somehow involved in tool and die with the auto industry. And he, one of his collections was Weiss Carver. And I really liked his Indian prints and stuff, and I didn't realize that he did so much other things.
He did a lot of other stuff.
No.
That's surprising, yes.
And I like bears, and this is going up to my cabin, so I had to have it. And, you know, they were pretty well off, so I thought that it was probably a nice thing to collect. He seemed to be investment savvy, so.
Exactly, yes. Yeah, no, Weiss Carver is a nice thing to collect. It is, he started doing his work, I'd say probably in the late 1970s, early 1980s, and his big influences are Native American and Art Nouveau. In fact, there was a piece that I think sold here at the event yesterday, one of the dealers had, that was an Art Nouveau, like a woman on a vase. It was Weiss Carver that I thought was really something. So, and a little bit different because he did a lot of things that were naturalistic, that were outdoors, and yes, let's bring it up where people can see. And he has on the back, this is a fairly early piece of his. I believe I'm seeing a date of 75 on here, if I'm reading it right, but it says hand paint 1975, and then it's got his signature on the front here in the lower corner. We see a lot of his work in Ohio. He did actually work in this general area, this part of the country, but he is collected everywhere. I first saw him in Snohomish, Washington. It was the first time I found a piece. Mm-hmm. And when he says hand painted, it's funny because it actually isn't, it is under a glaze, but it's a little different than, you know, we think of the pottery companies as doing decorations under slip and under glaze. This is actually more like a painted surface that he then glazes over with a gloss glaze. So it's a little different firing, and it's a different effect than you usually see. I think it's a really good piece. Do you mind me asking what you gave for it, if you remember?
I'm sure that I like this one. I know I gave somewhere probably around $150, $200.
Well, you got a pretty good deal. I saw a bunch of these in an antique mall in Zanesville, Ohio. Now, you have to understand, when you're in Zanesville, Ohio, you're in the center of the pottery industry where it all took place, and the prices are probably the highest there. But I saw something very similar to this, priced around $500. And so I would say that might be your top-end retail, anywhere between maybe $400 to $500, and for insurance, if you are going to keep this, which it sounds like you are, you might insure it for as much as $750 to $900, because you know, this is, it's funny, people ask me a lot of times, what should I collect from the 80s? Well, this is definitely something that was done in the 70s and 80s that's very collectible now, and we forget how long ago that's been. Unfortunately, it's been a minute since that, so there's not going to be more.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is Weiss Carver a name to look for?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely a name to look for.
You know me, definitely bought more of his works thinking that it was a good investment. So.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Very cool.
All right, well, that was our test appraisal. So I will go over there and be on the other side.
Okay, we're going to have people come up, and I'm going to let Heidi work the floor and have you all come up in whatever order you like.
Now, this was my grandmother's, and she was always very proud of it. There are more.
Oh, yeah.
4 or 6. She said it was very, very old. So I wanted to verify how old it is.
It is very nicely done. I'm going to get a little jeweler's leap out here so I can see a little more closely.
Who are we talking with?
I'm Laurel Petrowski.
Where'd you come from, Laurel?
Marshall.
Oh, awesome. Nice to
I haven't lived there a terribly long time, but it's a great little town.
Here we go. It's in the wrong pocket. Okay. So this is Blue Willow, but Blue Willow is a giant area of collecting. Blue Willow is one of the earliest patterns that was done as transferware on porcelain. Transfer meaning this is a decal. It's not hand-painted. It's done under the glaze. They started doing that in the late 1700s in England. And this one is marked, as I suspected, Copeland. And Copeland, it's a very small mark. I'll hold it up to where hopefully it'll be visible there. But Copeland was a tea merchant, and he met a guy named Josiah, was that his first name? Anyway, he met Spode. And Spode was a China merchant, and Copeland was a tea merchant. And Spode wanted to open the first China store that ever existed in England. And he needed a backer. And he also needed designs. And they had just figured out how to do transferware with the decals. So they actually took tea wrappers from Copeland's tea importing business, and those were the basis for the first designs like this. And so that's how this originated, because they wanted something that really looked Asian, because up until the late 1700s, the English didn't know how to make porcelain, and they had to import everything from China, so they were used to those designs. And that was what was fancy and important to them, because you could afford to bring this all the way overseas. Well, then Copeland and Spode started making it in England, and it became a giant industry in England. And this one, because of the Copeland mark, is probably going to date, it doesn't say England, this will probably date sometime around maybe the 1890s. So it is an older piece. It's a nice little demi-tasse cup and saucer, and you said you have a whole set.
My daughter has one, and I think my cousins have more. So there's at least 4, probably 6.
Very good. There definitely are collectors for this, and while the dinnerware market isn't as strong as it used to be, I would still estimate probably $20 to $25 per cup and saucer. So if there's 6 of them running around, you probably have about $150 scattered between family members.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, very nice. And just because I can't help but notice you're wearing a really beautiful Art Deco looking onyx necklace there.
Is that all?
Oh, yes, everything I own.
We're going to have a live on-body appraisal?
Why not? It's great. Yes, it's really fun. Collecting old jewelry is definitely a mainstay for a lot of people. So this is nice. And yes, it has the right chain. I'll try not to fold too hard. I'll just hold this up so everyone can see why I was so attracted to this and wanted to show all of you.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very, very sweet filigreed, I would say probably Edwardian piece. How did you get this one?
eBay.
eBay, really? Did they tell you anything about it when you got it?
No, I just liked it.
You just knew you liked it, yeah. Well, it's very pretty. It has, it looks to me like it's onyx. Now, these things that look like diamond chips are actually glass, because this would have been costume for the time. But it's very, very nice. And because of all the filigree and the fact that it is essentially an Edwardian piece of jewelry, I want to ask you what you paid first, but I'll tell you what I think it might be worth. I think in the right place, if I took this to, say, the West Palm Beach, Florida show, which is full of jewelry and people go there looking for these, I could see this price in the $125 to $150 range at least. So
Okay. I paid a little less than that.
You paid a little less than that.
Yeah, I usually pay what it costs for me to own it.
Yes. Well, that is the thing to do. You know what? You buy what you like, and you buy it because it fits your budget and it fits your collection and it fits your life. And, you know, sometimes you get an amazing deal and sometimes you just buy it because you want it and it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I was going to bring another piece, but I didn't know we could bring more than one.
Oh, God. Well, you're just down the road. So if you find another piece and come back, you're welcome to bring, you're not far. So you're welcome to bring more.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, George.
Hello there. How are you?
Fine. I watch you all the time.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very nice to hear. And
What's your name? Jean. Hi, Jean. Where are you from?
We live in Jonesville now.
Oh, awesome. You're local, too.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
so tell me how you got this nice piece.
George, I bought it someplace probably 35 years ago.
Really?
I just wondered if they're amber.
Well, I'm going to take a little cloth that I have to it, and we're going to see what it might be. A couple of things. So I've just discovered these. They're wonderful, and a friend of mine gave them to me, and I'm going to order more because they're great. This is actually something to test for bakelite. Yeah. I don't believe they are bakelite. I think there is a good chance they are amber or amber looking, but I just wanted to see. And yeah, we don't see any yellow streaks on here so not bakelite. We can rule that out. Let me put this in here so it doesn't dry out. And then the question with amber. Now, amber is a natural stone, of course, well, a material. It's actually tree sap that's been fossilized. So it should feel cold to the touch. And when I hold it to my cheek, because your hands get calluses, so it's hard to tell temperature, but your cheek usually can tell, it actually feels room temperature. So I think what you actually have are a nice set of beads that are probably more like nylon pop bead that were popular in the 1940s and that era. Because it has a barrel clasp, which is definitely from that era. Barrel clasps where they screw together like this and look like a barrel are typically found in jewelry from about 1940 to 1970-ish. So I'd say these are probably from the 40s or 50s. And do you remember what you gave for them?
No,
It's just been far too long.
I've had them a long time.
Well, it's nice that they're graduated. They have the look of amber and they have the look of bakelite. And so there are people who buy these and they like them because they're not quite as expensive as those materials. I would say probably $45 to $50 would be a store price today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Deb Gaston, and I am from Jonesville as well.
Wonderful.
And I don't know anything about art.
Thank you for bringing your mom on Mother's Day. That is very nice. Well, this is interesting. How did you get this?
This came from a garage sale in Houghton Lake, Michigan that was bought by a friend of my mother's. And then Mother bought it from her for me.
Very
Because
good.
I liked it because it looked medieval to me, and I'm an Anglophile, so anything medieval.
It does have a medieval look, and this is basically a variation on a theme of what they called an oklad, which was originally in the Eastern Orthodox Church. They would do these icons, and then the oklad was this covering. If you were very wealthy, it would be done in something like sterling silver or with a gold wash. And if it was for people who were of normal means like me, then you would have it and it'd be brass and silver plate, which I believe is...
Stamps on the back of it.
Yes, we're going to take a look on the back because it does have some interesting wax seals on the back and it also has some information on the back. And so we'll see if it tells us a little bit more. It's in...
Polish, I believe.
Yes, it is in Polish. It's interesting because when I went to Poland, I saw pieces like this, and they are very, very popular. Their Catholicism is still very strongly followed in Poland. And so there's churches almost everywhere. And I would say this one, let's see, the wax stamps also appear to be Polish. Yeah, they definitely are. And so the wax stamps, I believe, were something that were allowing this piece to be exported out of the country. And so I think that's what the information on the back is about. Now, the piece in the frame, it does appear to be hand-painted. It has a lot of graffito, which is where they take some sort of an instrument and just sort of scratch on it for extra texture and detail. You don't really see that until you get up close with the... jeweler's leaf, so I'm not sure why they did that other than to give it an older look. The date on this, I would say some of our clues, first of all, it was a Polish export piece with the wax stamps. Secondly, funnily enough, the color of the backing when you have felt sometimes will tell you an age. We see this sort of olive drab backing a lot around 1900, 1910, 1920, and I do believe that's about the era of this piece from what I see. I don't see anything that indicates that this is silver, so I believe this is plated. I'm looking for any sort of a mark. Now, on European pieces, it's not going to say sterling. It's going to have a number, 925 or 800 or whatever the purity of the silver was. That's how they do it in Europe, but I don't see anything like that. So I believe it's plating of silver plate. These are actually pretty collectible, and I would say the value on this in a retail store now would be maybe... In Poland, these were bringing the equivalent of about $125 to $150 when I saw them there. And I think that that's probably about right for our market. Now, if it was Russian sterling with a Russian sterling mark, then you might be looking over $1,000 for a similar piece, but they're really beautiful.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have a question from somebody online. Can we take that
Sure.
in between? And somebody else who has just one item can come up. Somebody's asking, are McCoy and USA items not so much sought after anymore?
Oh, no, I don't agree with that at all. McCoy is actually pretty collectible. I see a lot of interest in McCoy. I buy and sell it all the time. And USA marked items, I think they mean probably ceramic specifically. Sir, if you look at the way the USA is printed, sometimes it'll be a clue as to the maker. I do find that with ceramics right now, people seem to want things that are marked in a way that they can identify who made them. So there's one USA mark that's easy to connect with Shawnee. There's one that's pretty easy to connect with Brush because of the way they form the letters. There's also a whole lot of things marked USA that we don't even know who they're by. So all in all, my feeling is I think a lot of people who were collecting 30 and 40 years ago before eBay leveled the market, they think that, well, because it's not as expensive as it was for eBay, it means that it's not as desirable, and that's why people are collecting them. And that's not really true. What eBay did is eBay showed us that there were this many in the entire world as opposed to the one we could see in front of us. So things we thought were really scarce turned out to be less scarce than we thought because maybe there was a whole bunch in one part of the country. But just because that affected the values doesn't mean it affected the interest in the stuff. There are still a lot of collectors for it. And now that things have found, eBay's been around a long time. A whole lot of stuff has gone into collections. And what I'm noticing with that is that, like when I wrote the Treasure Craft book, I could go online and I could see 300 or 400 items every day, and there might be 10 or 15 interesting ones. Now I might see 300 items a week and there might be 2 interesting ones. That's the difference. So there is demand for these things, but what's happened in the last 20 or 30 years is thanks to eBay and better information and all the online stuff, we have a better idea now of what's really rare and what we're likely to see more often. And that's what's changed. Hello there.
Who do we have here? What's your name, hon?
Judy,
Judy, where are you from?
Union City.
Oh, another local gal. Awesome. Nice to meet you.
Well, thank you for bringing this in, Judy. Tell me a little about this piece of china and how you got it.
I got it when my aunt passed away, and I've got a full set of it.
With serving pieces and casserole dishes and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And is it a service for 8 or
6?
6. Oh, good. 6, to be honest with you, so it used to be that everybody wanted to have a china pattern because that was just what was done. And then by the time my generation came along, I remember a bunch of friends of mine got married all at the same time, and none of them had a bridal registry, and none of them wanted a china pattern or a silver pattern or any of that. I'm now seeing younger people starting to want those things again. So I think we're starting to see people collecting like that again. But because families are smaller now, having a set of 6 is actually easier to sell than a bigger set.
Oh.
This one is called Lola, and this is a Noritake piece. And it's got there's something on here that's kind of interesting to show. So if you notice under the mark here, it says U.S. Design Patent Number underneath the mark. And that's because Noritake made pieces before the Second World War, and this pattern came out before the Second World War. But then after the Second World War, there was a lot of concern that the Japanese would rip off our designs and make cheap copies of things. So we made them register their patterns at our patent office so that we would know which was which and whose was whose. Now, Noritake was not one to copy other people's stuff because they were a very good company that made their own. But this should date sometime to probably very shortly after the Second World War or just before. And the Florola, which is this pattern of repeating garlands, is pretty. Noritake did make a lot of sets like this, and because not as many people are buying sets for service, it used to be considered very important to have a gold rim, for example. You paid extra for a gold rim. Then microwaves became very popular, and now people don't want gold rim because you can't put it in the microwave. So it's interesting how different generations had different priorities. Your set probably would sell now for maybe $250 to $300, but for insurance purposes, I would insure it quite a bit more. If you're familiar with a place called Replacements Limited, they charge big money for replacing these things if you break it and have to replace it. And that's what we use as insurance value, because if you were in a hurry and you had to get one, you might have to order from them and it's the only place you can get it. And so for insurance purposes, maybe $600 or $700. Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
That's so nice. I thought somebody just bringing a piece of furniture. Should we do that?
Oh, that looks like fun.
Because this is going to be in her.
Okay. And hi, Dan Brandt. Thank you very much. And hello, everybody who's watching this. I'm glad that we've got people on this side of the camera and out there watching online. So thank you for being with us on a Mother's Day. And yes, happy Mother's Day to all the moms. I'll tell you what, let me move this and this. And why don't you put it sideways and then we'll see it. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we'll do it this way and then I'll maneuver it from there. Thank you. You did great.
Got it?
Yes. How did you get this piece? And hello, by the way.
My grandmother had it, and then my stepmom, and then I got it.
Very good. So it's just always been in the family.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to show everybody out there the bottom just for fun, because we almost never get to see the bottoms of pieces of furniture because they're too big. But this one has a nice mark. It's kind of sideways here, but it says Lane. And Lane is the company, you might know them best for making cedar chests. And they also made lots of other furniture, and they made a lot of really cool mid-century modern furniture as well, even though they started out doing traditional designs. And what's interesting about this one, to me, if you turn it around, is one of their mid-century designs, they had a line called Lane Laminates, and this is part of it. And you notice that they're doing, it almost looks like tongue and groove, almost like dovetailing here. And that was because they wanted it to seem more like handmade, but it also was an interesting way to do a repeating geometric figure that was modernist at the same time. And the people who collect mid-century modern really like these pieces now. Your piece has been maybe lacquered over once by somebody at some point. It probably would be worth more if it was stripped and refinished. I'm not saying you should do that. If you ever wanted to sell it, you might want to have that done. In the condition it's in now, it's probably worth about $100. If it was cleaned up, it might go for as much as $200 to $250 in a place that sells mid-century modern. And some of their pieces go rather high. I had this line in a boomerang-shaped coffee table, and that went for $700. So, very nice collectible.
Yeah, and I tell you, it's good.
They are really well made.
Sitting on it when she was a baby to my granddaughter sitting on it when she was...
Exactly. Well, that's part of the fun of keeping these things in the family, is that not only is it a cool piece of furniture with a great story, but it's also got, 3 generations have sat on it and it's still here. And that says something about it.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh.
Thank you.
All right, I'll take it right outside for you, hon. How's that? I got it.
Good to see you again. You've had a busy weekend.
It has been a busy weekend, but it's been a lot of fun. Yes, and this mild-mannered gentleman is actually, he clerked for the auction here, but he is Heidi's auction mentor, which makes him my auction mentor because I only did it yesterday for the first time.
And did an excellent job.
Well, it was fun. It was okay for a first try. Tell me about her and how you got her.
We would have bought her many years ago at an auction. Beyond that, the interesting thing was the bolt and the Mac and how it fastened, and if it was just decorative.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think the big question with these is always, is it an original or is it a reproduction? And the bolt in the back can be a clue. We also look for things like the gapping along the side. She doesn't really have big gaps between the two pieces of metal, and that's a good sign. She doesn't have big filing marks. And the more I look at her, I do think that she has some age. This actually lifts out the little bowl on top, and then you have the Mammy at the bottom here, and there's the top. The more I look at her, sometimes the big screw makes me nervous in the back, but the more I look at her, I don't really think she's a reproduction error. I think she is original. I just think she might be later production of these, meaning maybe 1950s era would be my guess as to age, as opposed to 1910s or 20s that you might see, because the larger bolts are a later time. But the other aspects of her, even the coloration, this sort of orange is the color we see in 50s era. So I do think that she has age. I don't think she's insanely old, but I don't think she's a new reproduction either. And because of that, do you mind me asking what you paid at auction?
And the hundreds of thousands of things that we've had.
Right. I guess that's a really unfair question, isn't it? I would say the value on her is probably in the, now I would say between 75 and 100. I would have said more at one time, but I am noticing that the black memorabilia has really slowed down quite a bit. And I think the reason for that is most of the collectors now are black people or mixed race couples, and a lot of white folks who used to collect it have become embarrassed to collect it, and they don't anymore. And it's funny, I talked to a fellow who is a black guy, and he and his wife, who is white, collect together. And I said, well, what's your opinion about all that? And he said, honestly, if it was made to be cute and it wasn't specifically made to be offensive, I don't see an issue with it. And I think people should collect it because it does represent the way things were at a certain point in time. And that was his take. And I figured, okay, well, you're black and you're a collector and you're in a mixed race marriage. So all of that to me gives you a little bit of cachet, and you can say that and I will take it at your word. And so I still buy and sell it, and I think it's really interesting as a part of our history. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And who we have here?
Leanne,
Hi, Leanne. Where you from?
in the city.
Union City.
Well, yes, you do have a newspaper here. And I have to be honest, when you first got it out of the bag, I thought, oh dear, here's one of these where I'm going to have to tell people that everybody in the world kept the JFK assassination newspaper, and everybody kept the Gulf War newspaper, and everybody kept the World War II started and stopped newspaper, and they're not very uncommon. And you have one from the Second World War, but yours is the Honolulu Star Bulletin. That makes a huge, huge, huge difference in value and interest. How did you get this piece?
Years ago, Mom got boxes of stuff in the bottom.
It was in the bottom of the box and stuff. Oahu bombed by Japanese planes. When a major event like this happens, whether it's the Space Shuttle Challenger blowing up or wars or various things that are shocking and make a big impact, lots and lots of people save the newspaper. The only ones that end up being worth a whole lot of money are the ones that were issued in the place where the event happened. And because this is the Honolulu Star Bulletin, it's obviously the first extra. The war has, we hadn't even declared war yet, I don't believe, or we were about to. And they are literally living this as this is happening. That makes this newspaper worth probably somewhere in the $100 to $125 range, as opposed to if you had the same bulletin printed in the Battle Creek Enquirer News, it'd be a $5 paper. So you have something really interesting. And all the years that I'd had people come to appraisal fairs, this is the first time someone got one out that was actually from the place that it happened.
Make sure you subscribe to George's channel and keep track of him. He's a traveling man, I'm telling you that.
Nice to see you again. Yes, it's been a long time.
Yeah, in this 20 minutes.
He's set up next to me outside selling.
All right. So, brought you this case, and this is about as good as I take care of this, but I think it's a really cool item. I got it at an online auction that is local to me, and there was only a couple pictures shown on the online auction that's like, okay, this is what we have, this is what we know about it, just briefly, and here's a couple pictures, but there are multiple illustrations inside. Mm-hmm. So I got lucky. I had to fight for it, and it was, as soon as I thought I won it, they would bid me back up, and I just had to keep going, but I got it, and I'm really excited to have this. With my kind of background and just being an artist and creative, I couldn't let this go.
This is cool. I can understand why. So what this is, and it's nice that I don't have to go through it all to show, because I should have brought my little gloves that I did not bring. So I'm going to be delicate about how I handle this. On the side it says Assorted Studios Fall 1948, and you think, well, that could be just about anything. Well, what it is it is a fashion book, and it has a whole lot of really important designers. Primarily, these are Christian Dior designs. And each page has a really great line illustration of various fashions. And 1948 is the era of the new look, and so this actually is a new look. Not just the hair, but the sort of wasp waist is something that is very much of that year. So this is actually a pretty important year for fashion. It's not just, I mean, this would be great no matter what era it was. But look at this, and it looks almost like a pencil drawing in here. Yeah, this is a pretty special thing. And you said you had to go back and forth. How high did you have to go back and forth?
I went up to, I believe, 675.
Yeah.
That was where my ending was. And I thought I had won at 200, and I thought I had gotten a steal. I thought I was like, oh, 200. I'm like, yeah, I'm like dancing around, and I look at the clock, and I'm like, refresh. They sniped in there. So the soft close happened, and I was like, okay, we're going back and forth. And yeah, there was other things in the auction ending at the same time, and I wasn't even looking at them, didn't even care. This was the one thing I had to have.
Yeah, this is just great. I mean, this has pencil marks with the line number and everything, and this is Frederick Milton. These are very important designs and very important designers of the time. It's a wonderful book. $675 is not too much to have paid for it. I honestly think in the right hands that this could go for $1,000 more, because it's one of these things where, and you would not want to do this, of course, but it's one of these things where it might even be worth more dead than alive, because people would love to sell the individual pieces. But I think it's really important to keep it in the book. And it looks to me like it's just such an interesting compendium the way they did it. I mean, some of this looks like some's printed, but it looks like watercolor. So it's right off of the original designs. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, no, this is really amazing. And honestly, the more I look at it, the better I like it, and the more valuable I think it is. I mean, there might be 100, 150 different pages in here. I mean, I'm leaning towards maybe more like 2,000 to 2,500 as a possible value for this.
And if I may, there is at least one illustration in here signed by Christian.
It actually has a signature.
And there's two of them that are very similar, and they have handwritten descriptions of how the pleat will be or how the things will fall, and it's all in his handwriting. And I can show you maybe.
Yeah, I'm going to let you show me, because
I'll fumble through it real quickly. But some of these ones in the back that are full color are just so incredible.
They're really great. The whole thing is really interesting, as both as a fashion illustration history and of the time, but the fact that you have pieces that are signed. Now we're talking another level entirely.
I should have had it bookmarked.
Oh, that's okay. Actually, that's good, because it gives me 1 minute to look at something while we're here.
So I have a question, Mike.
Sure.
Did you buy that mostly on just instinct because you liked it? I mean,
Yes.
how did you
I didn't know
what to stop at? I mean,
Well, I honestly didn't have a ceiling. I was going to keep going. I with having a family of artists, and I didn't know much about fashion art, but it looked just so, like George said, important. Like this belonged somewhere else. It was in a very high-end collection. These people, I don't know exactly where they got it. I don't know if it was a gift from somebody or what, if they were just lucky enough to stumble upon it, but it came out of a great collection. Everything in that auction was so good. And I didn't want to have one of those moments of regret later on that, oh man, I saw this one thing one time, and then I see it end up on Antiques Roadshow. And like, I was just to that point where in the past, I would have had to have passed on it. I couldn't have maybe afforded it. And at that time, I was like, I have the money. I'm going to go for it.
So that's great. Well, you made a really, really good buy. And I wish I could tell you how good to buy. I've given you a couple of value ideas, and the more I look at it, the better I think it is. And I think it would take a little bit of research to really firm up the value. But I'm definitely thinking in the low four figures. But that could be a few thousand or close to 5,000 potentially if the right person had it. And I think it would take a little more research to get a firm number, but you're not really planning on selling it anyway. I can tell you love it, and
I
you
do.
should. And so I imagine that insurance, I'm going to say $4,000 to $5,000.
Cool.
If it's going to stay with you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
It's very, very great.
We have one question from a watcher at home. What was the book originally used for? Was it?
I've been told that it was compiled. So Frederick Milton, if I'm mistaken, correct me, but I think that was the fashion company that they would scout designs. So they would ask for different designs from designers, and they would compile catalogs. A sample kind of
Right, and that's why it's called the assorted studios, because they're taking from various studios doing fashion illustration for these people. Mm-hmm. And yes, exactly. I think that's what it is. It's basically their test book. And then if they like the designs, then, I mean, if you ever watch Project Runway, this is how designs were done. You start with a sketch, and then you build it out, and then you do a prototype, and if they like it, then you start producing. So, this is really, really interesting. And interesting, again, that it's 1948, because fashion really changed that year a lot. It went away from the World War II era stuff and really became a lot more sleek and just it's terrific.
That's cool.
Yes.
Well, thanks, George.
Thanks, JJ.
Come on, someone to go at the. Yep, I wanted him. Come on.
I sent some emails to some people in New York at like the Fashion Institute and the Met and stuff, and I've gotten some response as far as that it's like, it's authentic, and they have
it's real. There's no doubt.
Right, and they have some, I guess, in their archives, but they weren't able to tell me much beyond that.
They never can tell. Museums and archivists will never tell you a value because it's not their bailiwick, and they're afraid to get in trouble with that.
Absolutely.
But the fact that they told you, this is real, but I knew it was real the minute I opened it. It's just great. I've only seen one or two others in the whole time I've done this. So
nice, very cool. Nice, man.
Hi, come on up.
Nice to meet you.
Big
fan.
Oh, thank you. What's your name?
I'm Carol Snap. 2 Snaps Vintage in Kalamazoo.
Oh, awesome.
But this is from my personal collection. And it is a exhibition catalog from the Shafrazi Gallery in New York City of a Keith Haring show. That I talked.
We were looking at Keith Haring when I saw the cover.
I talked my professor into giving me independent credit to go to New York and take pictures of gallery shows. I was at the desk buying the catalog, and the man said, if you'd like to meet Keith Haring, he's across the street.
Wow.
I'm 20 years old, and I said, no, thank you, I'm not worthy. And the guy said, oh, wait a minute. And somebody from behind me grabbed the book, did a drawing, and said, have a good life, handed it back. And that was Keith Haring.
That's fantastic. So he did this drawing in the front of your book for you. Look at that. Wow. Well, there's 2 really interested printed materials in a row.
On opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yes, absolutely. But that is fantastic. How neat. I'm so glad he did that for you and didn't let you just be shy and not
Be a little college student, right?
That's so cool. Well, yeah, because, he came from the same sort of background as the rest of us. I think he was, everybody I've talked to, I had a friend who met him as well. And they all said that he was actually a very real person in person, that he wasn't, he was never really full of airs or self-importance. And they actually show, it's great because this catalog that he did this in for you shows some of his stuff when he was a street artist. I think there's even, there's a nice piece of graffiti here. And then in the middle of it, you see with the, I forget what he called this, where he did the lines.
Something like the Atomic Baby.
The Atomic Baby. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. And the idea, he would highlight things with rays and various stuff to really accent the features. And of course, he became very, very, very famous eventually as an artist. He did lines of stuff for everybody from clothing makers to Swatch watches in the time. And they're all very collectible now. And of course, he passed from AIDS early in the AIDS epidemic. And because of that, his career was cut short in its prime. And there is something about that when we lose people when they're at the peak of their popularity kind of never seems to subside, like Elvis and Marilyn, It just keeps going on, and future generations are aware. So because of that, Keith Haring is definitely a thing, and especially as 80s art and design become more and more collectible. And this is definitely this era because it's been long enough. You know, you were 20 then, now you're the collecting age. And here's this thing that's really significant from your life, and you're not the only person who met him. So there is a demand for this a lot, but it's so neat that it was done to you specifically, which makes it a little bit tough to value in a sense, because we have something that has sentimental and personal attachment to you that's beyond what money could replace.
I have dragged that thing around for 40 years.
I bet you
From
have.
Battle Creek to Kalamazoo to Seattle to Florida and back home.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
And it's just fantastic. And, you know, so this page alone could be framed and worth quite a bit of money as an original piece of art. But then you have this great story, which, you know, at some point, and I tell people this a lot, if you have a personal story that attaches to an item like this that's really specific to you, go ahead and make a note of it, write it down, put it in with it so that future generations will know the whole story of how. That's a wonderful story you told. And if you weren't here to tell us, well, we'd see a great book with his piece of art in the front, but we wouldn't know that it came to a 20-year-old college student in the strange circumstance and that he did it on the fly, which makes it probably a little more valuable, but way more interesting. You know, they've done stuff on him on Antiques Roadshow, and the values are high now. I would say because it's an original piece of art in this book, I mean, this is probably conservative at maybe $5,000 to $7,000 potentially. I mean, it's amazing. 2 books in a row that are really significant, and it might be more because the market for Haring is really good right now.
Yeah.
I would have to look and see recent exhibition of him, because it might be that I should be telling you 5 figures and I just don't know better.
Yeah, we don't know till we know.
We don't know till we know. And of course, because it's specific to you,
Yeah.
then we really don't know until we know. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Very interesting. And tell us where your shop is again.
We're Two Steps Vintage. We live in Kalamazoo, but we have booths in malls. Saugatuck Antique Pavilion, Freight Lakes in Coloma, and Burgess in Galesburg.
Excellent.
And they're all lovely.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you.
This is my piece I always call my Picasso piece because I can't find anything about it. For 20 years, I probably paid $2 for it.
It's really cute, and it is sort of Picasso-esque.
So that's what I call it.
Oh, I like it. Yeah, it's almost like a gollywog design, and she's dancing and tumbling and doing various things. You can only see a little tiny bit of the label that's left, but this is from the 1960s, and it was actually a Japanese company that made these.
Okay.
And I wish I could remember their name. It starts SO, and I've seen the label, but they're not one of the more widely known ones.
Okay.
The main interest in this is going to be because it's mid-century modern looking, and also because it's a gollywog, and there are collectors for them as well. So I would say your $2 or $3 investment is probably about a $35 or $40 base today.
Not Picasso.
Not a Picasso, but
Somewhat, yeah.
Well, how did you get this piece?
Estate sale. I bought them in a lot.
Very interesting. Yeah.
You like that?
All made of buttons. And that is just really something different. Every one of these is a button, and they've strung them all together into a necklace. So this is something somebody made for themselves after collecting a whole lot of buttons over the years. And it could be that they were from a family button collection, or it could be that it was just they enjoyed this and thought it would be a fun idea. I'm looking to see what they used for string, because the era of the buttons varies. Like this is probably 1930s or 40s, this big coat button that they're using as the pendant with the carving. It's likely to be Bakelite. Some of these are a little bit later. This faceting here is probably a 1960s, 50s, or 60s era piece. I don't see anything I think is Victorian, but I don't see anything that's newer than mid-20th century. Long necklaces like this with a big pendant at the bottom were definitely something that was popular in the 1960s and 70s, and so I suspect that's when it was strung. And, you know, the value is mainly as a piece of wearable jewelry, which it's pretty cool. How much do you want for it? No, I think it's really neat. And, if I had it, it's a little bit of the sort of, this is one of these things because we don't see these very often, and it's a one-of-a-kind thing. How do you really compare it to something else? So I judge it based on what would a fun, interesting piece of jewelry about this size, this era be in general. And I would probably price it $85 to $100 off the top of my head, maybe a little bit more because of the work that went into it. I think there's something to respecting the fact that somebody sat there and strung it all together, and that takes time. Just having this, if this were to fall apart, the cost of restringing it would be $40 or $50.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking maybe $100 or $125 even for the right person. And it looks like it was done on a pretty decent, it looks like filament of some sort. So I think it's pretty strong, and it definitely seems like something done in the 60s to me.
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's all I was curious.
Very cool. Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
This is Laura. We got to meet and have fun yesterday, and I'm just so glad that you got something to bring.
Thank you.
Tell me what these are and how you got them.
So
What you know of.
I was at a Goodwill and they rolled out a new cart and these were teetering on the edge. And I just thought these are going to get chipped or broken.
Right.
And I just felt like I had to rescue them.
Oh.
I know nothing about them. I can't find any information about them through Google. And I thought, they're so delicate. And I used to do pottery, and so I know how much work goes into making something like that. And so I'm just so curious to know about them.
Yeah, and you're right. These are well done. They do not look like something that was just somebody with the studio and a kiln just sort of putting it together. They're done in a way. There's a lot of detail. There's a lot of detail in the paint under the glaze. Lots of very small dot work and hand painting and applied porcelain in layers. They do seem like they're fired to a porcelain bisque rather than just being a ceramic. There's a date of 1985 on this one, and there's initials. And so, there's a copyright, a 1985 date, and then the initials on the feet are P. It's either PB or PH, so that's going to be your maker. However, I still think this was a really small studio that did these, and I'm sure that they had distribution in a line, but I cannot honestly tell you that I've seen these before either, so it's going to be a little bit of a mystery for us to solve.
What's a mystery?
Yeah, it's you got these. You're in the Chicagoland area.
Yeah.
So you found these in that area.
I did.
Okay.
Yes. Northwest suburbs, right by O'Hare.
Okay, well, the only thing I can think of is if there is some sort of a ceramic guild in that area that possibly somebody there might recognize these and be able to tell you who the original maker was, but I suspect that there was somebody who sold regionally. The design is good. I imagine they weren't much if you got them off the cart.
No, they were $2 each.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm glad you saved them. I think just for the quality of the wear, they remind me a lot in terms of the quality of Hagen Renneker, which is in San Diego and makes small animals and figures. And they definitely have a high quality for being small figures. So I wish we could tell you more about who made them, and maybe we will someday. But in terms of the value, just as being something cute and fun and well done, I might price them at $20 to $25 each if I had them for sale. So, well done. Thank you for rescuing them.
Well, you're welcome. I'm glad I rescued them. They're sweet.
It's always so crazy when you go in the thrift store and they have the stuff in the cart and it's all just jumbling around and you hear it clinking against each other and you're like, oh, stop, let me look first.
I know. I just couldn't stand the thought of them breaking. So, thank you. So my next item is from my father-in-law.
I gotta lean in a little bit. There we go.
He's 99 years old, and he was in the war, World War II. And he was in the Navy and on a ship. And his ship, they say they captured a German submarine, but it's more like they rescued.
Oh, yes.
Because the German soldiers were starving on the submarine, and when they came together, they started giving things to the American soldiers, the sailors, I should say. And so this is what he brought home.
Oh, interesting.
From the war. And it's been in my husband's family for many, many years. Don't know anything about it.
Oh, that is very interesting. Yeah, and an interesting story. And I think that there's more of that than we realize goes on. You know, we kind of think of war as being the spoils and that they confiscated all of this at the end. But there really are a lot of stories of where people who are on other sides of fighting, especially near the end of a war, usually one side is really, really, really down on its knees, and hopefully somebody takes enough pity on them to try to help them out, and that's why they give you things like this. So it's a wonderful story. I would say that these are, they're definitely German binoculars from that era. They would have been made for the Second World War. They're very heavy. I believe that they were from the German Navy. And which makes sense since it was a submarine that was involved with in the story. The lanyard says made in USA.
Oh, he probably...
I'm sure he added that later. I'm sure he just got this piece. And you can tell that they were using them roughly in a war zone because they're actually beaten up, which personally I like. I see so much stuff. There's a lot of reproductions of Second World War things, particularly from the German side. And it all looks perfect and pristine, and I think that's not how people can't take care of things like that in a war zone. That's not real. This is definitely real. I wish I could see some designation. Usually they have some sort of military designation where we can tell a model and that sort of thing. And I can't see anything like that on here. But again, we're talking about wartime. You know, in the high points of the war, then you have your logo and your everything is on there. And when you're in a real hurry and things aren't going well, you just make what you need and put it out the door. Germany, even before the war, we got a lot of our camera lenses from them, and they were known for very good quality. And this actually has a long, long focal point. I'm looking way out into the trees and seeing birds out there. So I would say conservatively, if we could figure out what model these were, which could be done with some research, then we could probably be a little more definite. But I would say conservatively, probably 250 to 300 is a value because they are very good quality and because they are war era, even though they don't have any. Now, I hate to say it, if it had a big Nazi logo on it, it would actually be worth more money, but it would also be a very specific collector. This is something that anybody who likes nautical binoculars, and there are people, I sold a huge binocular on a stand. It looked like one of those survey transoms in the middle of the road when they're doing road work. And it had this giant binocular set on, and it was American from the Second World War, and I think I got $2,500 for it. So there is a customer for this.
Thank you. So interesting.
I just love seeing what people bring.
Hello, I'm Tina, and I'm from Chicago. And I have this item here that I'm just curious if it would be designated for tulips in particular.
For tulips specifically. Okay. How did you get this?
At a thrift store.
Okay, well, it's very nice because it's made in Italy, and there's a lot of interest in Italian ceramics, and this appears to be a 1970s mark.
Okay.
It's a seance-type glaze, and it does have the holes in it for arranging. It's certainly big enough for tulip stems. I don't know that it was specific to that. I think it was really for arranging any sorts of flowers that had a larger stem. I mean, but it's definitely a flower frog, flower arranger. It's just a different type. And flower frogs are very collectible. In fact, I ran into, at the last show I did in Spokane, Washington, I ran into a family who has their father's collection of over 500 different varieties of flower frogs. And he had the Weller shaped like a crab, and he had Italian ones that are like this. What's neat about this style is that it's tall, and so when you do the arrangement, you end up with a really big, strong arrangement in the middle, whereas most of them are low and flat, and you just have sort of a little pile of flowers. So this one functionally is a little more interesting, and I would say, I mean, tulips would be pretty, but I don't think it's specific to any one flower. It's just specific to probably larger flowers like a tulip with a little wider stem. Yes, exactly. Yeah, lots of things would work in it. In fact, daisies would be cute.
Yeah, that would be.
Value on this is probably around $45 to $65, depending on how you sold it and where.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
So, oh, this is neat.
Okay.
How did you get this? You're way up in Minnesota. What are you doing with Mexicans?
We want to be there in the wintertime.
I understand.
We just picked it up on an estate sale. You know, I like pottery, and we just kind of thought it was really neat. And
I like it too, and I especially I like the long, so you can't lose or break the lid. It's an interesting way of doing it. It's almost big enough you could pour into it and drink out of it, like a tumbler, but it's obviously meant to be a pitcher, and this size would have probably been considered a water pitcher. It's a little bigger than a milk pitchers are usually a quart. It does have a mark on the bottom, and the mark on the bottom, I should be able to read that. It's a little blurry.
something that look around.
Interesting. It actually says made in Mexico, which is interesting because nowadays they say hecho in Mexico, even if it's for export in the United States. But back then, so this was actually originally meant to be sold to American tourists or to be sold across the border in shops here in the United States because it's marked in English. And that's a little earlier. I believe this would be made in the Tlaquepaque era. That's the area. We usually call it Tlaquepaque pottery. And it's not, it's in the same general area where Ken Edwards did Palomar, and the Tonalá is the town where a lot of the pottery was made there. But I think this one actually is, it's all close to Guadalajara. I think this is right down the road from there. All hand painted. Now, the one thing about these, and I can't tell you without looking, you'd have to have it tested. I wouldn't necessarily drink out of it. Like they say in Mexico, don't drink the water. And in this case, the reason is that one of the reasons Ken Edwards became such a important figure in Mexican ceramics is Ken Edwards was the one who said, you're making great stuff, but you've got to take the lead out because it's not good for you. And so he pushed them away from the tin glazes that had lead in them. This might have lead in the glaze, and it might have a whole lot of lead in the glaze. So I would say, you know, maybe water your plants with it, but I wouldn't water yourself with it. It's a neat piece. I would think that the style and shape is probably 1950s, and which is about the time he went down there and started working. I think he went in the 60s, if I remember, somewhere in there. But I think it's great. If I had it in... I sell some of this in Washington State, and I've got a pretty active market for it. And if I had it there, I would probably price it in the, $75, $85 range probably. And it might take a little while, but it would sell eventually.
Great. Thank you very much.
Very nice.
Okay.
Hello.
1, 2, 3 things.
Oh, it's so interesting because I saw this on your table, so let's start with this. And I actually was going to pick it up and ask you about it.
No idea.
How'd you get it?
An estate sale.
Oh, around here?
That's the end of the story. Yep.
That's the end of the story.
Yeah, I have no idea about it otherwise.
Well, it's a beautiful piece, and it's got some nice age, actually. If you look at the bottom, it has a pontil mark that has been ground to sort of a satin finish, but it's a small pontil mark, so we know it's not one of these new Chinese pieces where they have the big divot underneath that looks like a machine took a chunk out of it and left sort of a satin finish. That would be new. These are old because it's small. It's case glass. It is red. It's actually almost a pigeon blood red over white. And that sounds like a horrible name for it, but it was considered very important in Victorian times. And I think this bottle is old enough to go back to that.
There were a lot of antiques at that particular sale.
Yeah. Well, and when you look at the bottom, you know, this wouldn't have been used hard or a lot, but it should still have some evidence of wear if it's 100-some-year-old. And if you look at the edge around the bottom there, it does have wear. And so that tells us that it's interesting. They ground the stopper a little. They didn't grind it really finely because you don't see it, and that's typical. I believe it's a Mary Gregory style, although that's sort of a euphemism. Mary Gregory was a specific person who did a specific thing, but people tend to call anything in white on glass Mary Gregory, whether for right or wrong. And people often call this Bristol glass, which we now know is not really correct either, because Bristol glass, it turns out, was a very specific blue color done in England in the early 1800s. So this is probably a late 19th or early 20th century piece from Bohemia. But you might hear it called Bristol glass because that's what everyone has learned to call it, because unscrupulous antique dealers 75 years ago called it that, trying to pass off Bohemian glass as the original English Bristol glass, and now we call everything Bristol glass, so it makes it very confusing. The point of all that is to say it's a really beautiful piece. The fact that it has the angel holding the baby and the detail on the wings is really good. It's a good, strong color. I would probably price it around $100 to $125.
Really? I tried looking it up online. I couldn't really find anything, so I really had no idea.
I don't know that you would find anything just like it. It's far enough back in time, at some point we kind of have to figure, well, we've seen similar looking scent bottles from that era of this quality, and the painting is really fine, and then we just figure, well, what did those sell for? Sometimes you just, you can't always find an exact one just like it to do your comparison. Sometimes you have to base it off close. It is beautiful, and you bought it right.
Fabulous. I think I got it for like $10.
Wow.
I bought it right. Wow.
Now tell me about this little piece.
Again, estate sale, but it's Civil War. I'm starting to really love tintypes, and that one is particularly appealing to me, and you'll see why when you open it.
Oh, yes. Oh, this is very interesting. Yeah, this is a good one. Okay, first of all, it is a tintype rather than a daguerreotype or an ambrotype, because it doesn't have a weird reflective quality on the glass. But you see, she sat with the baby, who they dressed in some sort of a Civil War era style uniform hat, and then she is put in a tintype of who I presume is the husband also. Now, that may be because he was lost in the war, or it may be just that they wanted to have all of them together as a remembrance. The fact that the child is dressed in the soldier's outfit makes this really a different level than if it was just a family portrait. And that's what you have to look for in these. There are certain things. A child dressed as a soldier is definitely a political statement as much as it is anything else at that time. And it's very unusual to see. He obviously wasn't going to go fight in the war at 4 years old, but they wanted to make sure that they were showing that they were on the right side of things. And that means that this piece probably could value as high as, for retail, maybe $250, for insurance, maybe $350 to $400. Wow. Yeah,
I actually really love it. I'm probably just keeping it.
Good.
Which is what I'm doing with this as well.
Okay. Oh, this is beautiful. Yeah, I don't see a whole lot of these. I've actually had one or two come to appraisals. This is a beautifully painted little portrait of the dog on a...
It's a little individual little pieces of glass.
Yeah. Oh, let me look with my loupe.
It's a micro mosaic.
It's a micro mosaic. Oh, that's even better. Oh, you're right. It sure is. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is really something even more special than I thought it was. I don't know if we can get this up close enough for you to see, because it'll probably go out of focus, but she is correct. Those are all little pieces of glass that were basically use tweezers and inlay each piece. And it's done in a larger piece that I was wondering at first if it's glass laid in glass or whether that might be a piece of onyx that is laid in. I don't think it matters much for the value, but I do believe it's glass on glass when I look at it up close, because there's a few very small chips on the edge. This is a really neat piece. It's got a C clasp. This is Victorian era, and we're probably looking, with the black background, we're probably looking sometime between 1860 and 1890. It's a little harder to get any more specific than that. How did you get this piece?
I got a $10 box of doll furniture.
Wow. Have you ever had the frame tested?
No.
Okay. I don't believe it's gold, because I do see tarnish on the back, so I think it's just a gold plating. because that would bring another extra value to it. But I do think it's a wonderful piece. We don't see very much Victorian micro mosaic. The fact that it's a dog makes it really appealing. It's a nice large size. It's just a really good piece. Everything you brought is really interesting today. I think maybe might be being conservative, but I'm thinking $500 to $700 is a potential price, but that might be on the short side if you did a little more looking. Have you looked into it at all?
I did a little bit.
And what were you finding?
I got around thousands, some thousands.
Really? Okay. I'll tell you what then. Let's see if we can find something right now on the fly.
Particularly.
Well, it's all those good things. That's the thing, and I haven't seen much.
But I'm not selling that either. So.
Well, let's take a look and see if we have any recent sales of anything similar, just for fun. Oh shoot! I did not get.
Well, it's got a wonderful story too.
I think maybe that's where using it as a picture in like a dollhouse.
wow.
So I think might have happened. Yeah, and that's why it was with doll furniture.
Yeah, and you are right. Now that I'm looking at completed sales on similar, although there's nothing exactly like this, you're right. They are going for low four figures, $1,500 to $2,500 does seem to be a range. So they're even better than I remember them being. That's just fantastic.
What are you doing? I'm gloving him.
Yeah. No, I was holding it to my cheek to see what it was made out of.
Oh. No, that's me showing love. I love it.
So, we were asking about your bracelet, George.
Oh, yes. Mike made these for us, and it says, thank you very much. Those were wonderful things. Yes, it says, it's a little hard to read, but it says Tique Stock. And he made these and gave a bunch of us this so that we could wear them this weekend in solidarity. I think it's really cool. He does make his own jewelry, and I just thought it was really neat. So that's my bracelet.
Laura came all the way from West Virginia.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah. A bunch of folks came a long way to be here, and it's really, really great. Look at all the detail. How did you get this piece? And
on an auction site.
Okay. And I would say, what did they tell you about it? But it's got some pretty good information right here. So.
They didn't. The funny part is they didn't bring that out on this piece. Other pieces they did.
Really?
Yes, and this piece they didn't. And it was one other person, I think, that recognized it.
Wow.
For what it was. I know.
Yeah, and there's the signature and everything. Well, it's got the Fenton signature, and it is the Dave Fetty stamp. And I have seen a lot of his work now, thanks to this group of people. I've really gotten to meet him, and I've gotten more familiar with his work than I was before. But I've got to tell you, I haven't seen anything that he did that was a pull and floral decorated. Yeah. That's really unusual about it. And I wish he was here to ask about if he would remember when he did this.
But the thing designed by Martha Reynolds, or does that say painted?
It's a little hard to read for me, but yeah, it does seem, I think she was the painter, and then this logo with him is usually 1990s?
Yes. Martha Reynolds designed some other pieces and actually painted them too. One was a bigger vase that was quite popular, and there were more of them. This, I think, is really cool. She is a very good painter, and she's just worked with him before in a clad piece. The egg is a beautiful color. I've never seen it before.
It's great. It's a really, really nice piece. And, you know, I haven't had this kind of a piece by him before, so I can't say I have. I've actually sold it and know from my own experience. I have sold some pretty good Fetty pieces for some pretty good prices.
Can I help you?
Yeah, could you? Because you may have seen more of this than I have.
I'm no expert at it, but I know just a regular Fetty egg can fetch $200-300,
right.
Sometimes even more.
Right.
Being that this is a collab piece with a Fenton artist that is so rare, I would say the painting has got to be make it worth double.
Oh, I would think so. I was thinking around $650 based on some pieces of his that I've sold that had other decoration by other artists. So conservatively, I'm going to say around $650, maybe more.
Okay. It's not for sale.
Yes, I didn't think so.
The keeper.
Almost everybody who gets those hangs onto them forever.
It was so funny because on that auction site, they had other Fetty pieces, and they put out there that it was Dave Fetty. All they did on this was showed a picture of the bottom. I was like, I swear that is his stamp.
Absolutely.
I swear it is.
Absolutely.
That's a busy pattern on the bottom. They might not have been able to make it out.
That's what I think too, because I actually, until you told me the decorator's name, I was having trouble reading it.
Yeah.
And then it came out because I'm like, oh, now that she said Martha, I see Martha, but I couldn't get it on my own.
It's lovely.
It's great. Thank you.
We all won.
Yeah. Yes. We'll start the auction now.
Yes. This is just a piece I bought at an antique store up in Connecticut. And it is sewing down the bottom, but I really can't make it out.
Okay. It's a studio piece. It does have a signature, and I think I might be able to read that for you.
And I think it might have a year. It has some sort
It does. It's, the number is the year. It's a copyright date. I think it's it's either 84 or 94. 1999. Okay. 1999 is the date, and the artist, it'll take me a moment, but I think I can get it. Oh, shoot. I've seen this before. Am I going to get it? Yeah, if I'm reading it right, I think it's Bin Sutter.
So hard to read on some of those.
They can be, but I believe that's right. And I do know this. It is definitely a known studio artist, and there is collectability for this. And it's interesting because it's this particular color scheme that was very popular in the late 90s, and we're just starting to see these hot pinks coming back into fashion again. Thank you to the Barbie movie, by the way. And so I know this artist to be a pretty good artist. Do you remember what you paid for it?
$75.
$75, yeah. I think work like this that I've seen sell at other shows, and I wish I could tell you his name exactly. It does start with the B, and it's the middle initials I get thrown off. Bin Sutter, yeah, I think that's right. In any event, this particular piece I would think would probably sell for around $2 to $2.25.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of interest, and I know this is an identifiable known studio artist, and I know I've seen his work in those price ranges. I wish I could remember the name so that I could tell you for sure, but I can see enough of it that I recognize it. So,
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. And then one other just quick piece.
Oh, this is nice.
I can't identify. I mean, I don't think it's old. It's not old.
It's not terribly old. It has a nice Chinese mark on the bottom, and it's got a mark that actually says that it passed inspection, so it was quality controlled. It's a really good piece of porcelain, actually. It's a very nice glaze. You know, I tend to denigrate newer Chinese things because I see so much stuff that they do that's derivative of what we're doing, and I think you have this huge history of wonderful things that you made. Why are you copying our stuff? Why don't you just make things that are original? Well, this is actually a glaze that is related, I believe, to Sang de Boeuf glaze. And this is based on an old ancient Chinese porcelain glaze. So even though it's a new piece, it's a very well glazed piece, and it actually does have more to do with their tradition than ours. And I like that about it. And, you know, right now, because it's not a terribly old piece and they may be making others like it, I wouldn't value it more than maybe $60 or $70 just because there could be more coming down the line. At some point when we know that this has age, if this was a piece from the 1920s that looked similarly, I would probably value it at about $175. So I feel like it's a good piece and a good piece to hold on to. And it's a chance for me to say, sorry, China, not everything you make is bad.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi.
Oh, that's cool.
It's a little rock. Van Harvey. I'm from Coldwater, Michigan.
Yeah, and you just set up out here today because I noticed you had
I talked to her the other day, and I decided to come on.
very good. Yeah,
You were going to be here.
you had some cool fishing stuff and all corky big bang just like mine. Except yours is brown and mine's green. I like yours. So tell me how you got this.
I found it at a garage sale.
Really?
In my travels around buying stuff.
Very interesting. Well, it's definitely a black memorabilia piece, but and it is
A little rough.
it's a little rough, but it's supposed to be an ashtray. It's been a little broken on one side, but this actually hinges so that the tongue goes up and down. It could be ashtray, could be to keep coins in, anything you wanted that you just sort of dump in the back and forget you have for a while and then take out later. When someone took it out, they damaged it a little bit on the hinge at one point. This would have been made in Japan probably around 1950. And they definitely are, you don't see any label or mark on here, but it's definitely porcelain of that era. And then it is, it's painted above the glaze because you can see a little bit of this chipped off, so it's not overglazed. I haven't actually seen this particular piece before, and we couldn't find it. We've looked it up. Yeah, and it also, the reason I think probably ashtray is it's got holes in the eyes, and that would make it a smoker where the smoke would come out of the eyes and all that kind of stuff. And then you would dump the ashes into the back. It's actually a pretty clever piece. I would say value in the condition it's in is probably around $50. If it was perfect, it might be $100 to $100 a quarter.
Okay. Thank you.
But it's cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And you're coming from Coldwater?
Coldwater, Michigan.
All right. Coldwater and Tietma.
Coldwater.
All right. Who else? Mickey wins.
You're the Lake Shore. Go up. That's right.
Yes. Well, it's so nice to meet you in person. I've seen you in the chat and online a bunch, and it's just great. I got to meet you a little earlier, and you got a bunch of great jewelry out there, so I'll take back the shop.
Yeah, please do. I get a couple things. Is that okay?
Sure.
Right. All right. This is the one I'm most curious about. I've been in groups looking for it. I don't know. I've been poking at it, and I just can't seem to find anything on it.
Well, it is an interesting piece. It has a tag on the back that says Murano made in Italy, but it's a little different than a lot of Murano glass we see. That is a legitimate tag, and I want to show that because we're having a lot of discussion right now about what Murano is real and what isn't. The little red tags with the gold Murano in script are the ones to really be wary of right now because yes, some things in Murano were made with that label, but the reality is that a whole lot of things that were not made in Murano are having that label stuck on it, so be very careful about those. This one is definitely Murano. That tag would have been used in the 1970s, so that is your era on this. And what's interesting about it is that, and I think part of the reason you're having trouble is, it looks like it's all hand-painted, but I think if we look at this closely, we're going to see that it's either a decal or a screen print. Okay, it is painted, but it's screen-painted, which is almost like an airbrush, like they have a pattern and then they're painting it that way. So not hand-painted in a brushstroke kind of way, and that's not a typical decorating style for Murano pieces, and so I don't think a lot of people would look at this and say, oh, that's Murano on
I wasn't sure when I picked it up.
And right, exactly. But it really is. I would say the date on this is probably right around 1980. And it's attractive, and paperweights are seeming to be popular again. I would say, maybe $50 to $75 would be a potential retail on that.
Thank you.
Well, this is cute. How'd you get this?
I bought it at an online auction, and I paid $11.
$11.
So
did they say anything about it? Did they know anything about it?
They had no information on it. I've done a little bit of research, but just haven't found anything yet.
Well, it has a mark on it that is pretty distinctive, but my feeling about this, because of the weight and also the way that it has a little iridescence, and it doesn't have a ton of wear, I suspect that this is Egyptian. There were a lot of interesting perfume bottles made about 30, 35 years ago in Egypt, made of glass, and they tend to be thin like this. This is a little different than the style I usually see, but they do tend to have this sort of iridescence to them as a typical thing, and that would be my best guess without having seen other pieces like this before and not recognizing that mark. That mark was a molded mark, so it does actually indicate some sort of a maker. So if you keep researching it, keep looking for that. But a bunch of people are saying hi, Mickey, by the way, because they recognize your name from our chat.
I do.
This was, and thank you for the super sticker. I just saw somebody put one up. That was very kind of you. I would say probably in the $30 range would be a safe place to price that. That's what I usually get for the ones that I've had from there.
Okay, yeah, I just couldn't find anything.
I feel like they're an up-and-coming collectible. I really think they were well done, and people... Well, yeah, people when they came out, I remember working in Centralia, Washington, and we had the antique district, but we also had a new gift store, and they sold the Egyptian perfumes new. And people thought they were really cool and were collecting them actively, who were our glass collectors collecting older stuff them, even though they knew they were new because they thought they were interesting shapes and styles. So I feel like it's a future collectible.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you as well. Thank you.
Hello. Come on up.
Okay, this is my ring.
Oh, this is great, Janet. Nice to see you again. How'd you get this?
I got it at a antique festival, and I'm just not worried about what it's worth. It's priceless to me.
Yeah.
Was just curious if you. I think the diamond was supposed to be mine cut.
It is a mine cut diamond. This is an older piece. There's some vermeil work on the edges, meaning that they've done a gold wash over the base metal. And then the question is, what is the base metal on this? Is it white gold? Is it sterling? Is it costume? It would surprise me if it was costume because that is a diamond. Oh, there we go. 18 karat white gold. There we go. Yeah, I figured as much. It's a really nice piece in a nice setting. I consider this to be an Art Deco era setting, but a lot of people refer to this as Edwardian jewelry. Edwardian to me is like before 1910. I really think this piece probably dates to about 1920, 25. Yeah, it's a really beautiful piece. Now, how long ago did you get it?
Oh, probably 6 years ago.
6 years ago. Okay. Well, the price of gold has really shot up recently. So, well, the value of this would have been probably pretty well known. And I would think, well, maybe you lucked out and they didn't even see that, Mark. Did you get it for a song or did you pay a regular price like you would for a ring? Yeah. You paid for it. Yeah, because they knew what they had. The thing is, whatever you paid for it, you can probably add 20 or 25% because the price of gold has gone up that much since that time. So I don't know what you paid for it, but if I had this out to sell, I mean, it's hard sometimes. I'm not a gemologist, and mine cut diamonds are something that you really would need a gemologist to weigh in on because clarity and brilliance and color and all of those things, you know, that's what they train for months to figure out. But conservatively, I'm thinking in the $1,200 range, maybe $1,000, somewhere in there. What do you pay for it?
Well, 600.
600. Okay, great. Yeah. And I mean, I'm quoting you probably more of an insurance value, but again, the price of gold has gone up so much that it turns out if you bought gold not that long ago, you're sitting on a profit. There's no guarantee it'll stay that way because gold goes up and gold goes down. But as long as we have a little bit more inflation than usual, people buy gold as a hedge. So
Well, thank you.
you did great. Thank you.
Janet, show the gals up front. They were wanting to see it. You were kind of looking at it.
Hi there.
Well, you know, for resale, I have to check different things. Like I like needles out.
Yeah.
Scored, you know, and I scored all.
I think it's great. And this, by the way, is Dawn Curtis for you folks who follow our chats because she's very active in them. So you'll recognize her. And she's selling here today. And so you bought this for resale.
I did, and I paid $750 for it. But I just like needlework, and I like fabric and things like that.
Oh, it's a very nice piece, and it was very popular to frame Chinese needlework and embroidery in the 50s and 60s and display it that way. And that's about, I would say this was probably done maybe even in the 70s looking at this.
Yeah.
But I think the piece was quite a bit older. I would say that, let me take a loop to it and see if we can see anything in the feathers. Yeah, their work is really, really fine. And the thing is that they don't really do a lot of this over there anymore because it required a lot of handwork. And China has a lot of factory jobs now. In fact, China is offshoring things that require a lot of handwork to places in Africa now. So, the world has changed quite a bit since this was made. I suspect this was done in the 1920s or 30s in all likelihood, or the original piece. And it doesn't have anything like forbidden stitch or something that would make it really, really super high value. But I think as a decorative item that you're still probably, I think it's early nationalist era. I still think you're probably looking at, for somebody who just likes it and likes the look and appreciates the work that went into it, maybe $45 to $50 is the store price.
Yeah. Okay. It's so hard to check those kind of things out and find out what the word.
Well, it is difficult, and Chinese art and artifacts, there is something called forbidden stitch, which if you look online, they'll actually show you what that looks like. And it was forbidden originally because I think it had something to do with that stitch was to only be used if you were making something for the emperor and their family, and it was forbidden for it to be used in other places. And so if you like this sort of thing, you might study that a little bit, because I have a friend who found one in a thrift store for $3 and sold it for $300 on eBay. So
okay, we do that.
And it was very small. It was like this big.
And then like this, okay, we have a thrift store close to us, and they put what they think are higher priced items, in a special case. And I went back and I thought, a lot of times they make a mistake and they put a bigger value on it than it is even worth for a reseller. And so, but I liked this one because it was red writing.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
I couldn't tell from the back hook or anything. I don't think it's silver or silver plate.
I don't think it's silver. I don't think it's silver or plate. I mean, it might be plate, but I think it's. No, I don't think so. I think it's just a pot metal that they silvered. But it is a good little pin. It is Red Riding Hood, and it's actually got pretty good age, because if you notice on the back, it has a C clasp. And what that means is there's a C-shaped hook, and then the pin just slides up into that, and that's it. And that's what holds it on. So a lot of these got lost, and then they developed better hooks later on. So that tells us it's pretty early. The fact that it's Red Riding Hood with the wolf is just great. And she has a lot of detail, actually. If you look up close, this is actually a pretty well-detailed pin, considering it was probably made for a young woman, or maybe even to put on a child's coat or something like that. Date on this is probably somewhere right around 1900. Now, you say they had it in the special case, so how special was it?
Oh, $50.
$50. Okay.
Yeah.
You know what? As a collector, if I like this, I would pay $50 for it. I think it's worth somewhere between $50 and $75, $85.
Yeah. Okay.
And the thing is that you go into thrift stores and they have these special cases. Like I was at when I was with Jocelyn from Crazy Lamp Lady at Burner Brothers, and we all went to the thrift store with Kate from Follow That Bug and walked around. The very last case before you go out is the jewelry case. And they had a cameo in it, and they had $295 on it. But then I looked at the tag and I realized, because they priced it so high, it had been sitting there long enough that I ended up getting it for $125, and it was worth about $2 to $2.50. Yeah. So you know what? It pays to look in those. When they overprice something, if it's a place you go to regularly, just keep going back. And if it's been there a while, a lot of thrift stores, they'll date the stuff and it comes down in price, or they'll have a certain color tag, it comes down in price. Right. If they don't, and it just sits there and sits there, there's one in Florida. They had a piece that, it was a nice bronze. It was worth about $40. They had $200 on it. It sat there for months. And finally I said, I noticed you haven't been able to sell that. That's probably about I think it was a $40, $50, $60 piece. And I said, I'm in the business, and to be honest with you, it's probably worth about $40 or $50. And he said, good, you can have it for $10.
Good. Wow. Okay.
Because they were sick of looking, because they were sick of looking at it, because they realized they'd made a mistake. So I happily took it home.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Laura.
Hi. Nice to see you again.
So this first item I found in an estate sale. It was in a dusty old basement among a bunch of Christmas decorations, and no one was looking at it. And I have a white cat, and so I just had to get this because it's white cat. And I just think it's freaking adorable. I had to have it because every single cat has a different look on its face.
Yes. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, this one's a little pop-eyed here. And this one looks like this one's having a lot of fun. This one looks a little annoying to be on the bottom of the heap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's hilarious. A whole litter of kittens. That's very fun. And how much did you give for this?
I paid $4.
$4. Well, I'd say that was a pretty good deal. Now, you look at this and you think, well, it's fun and it's whimsical and it's silly. Could it possibly be anything good? Well, then you look at the bottom, it's actually got an Italian mark on it. So this is Italian ceramic, which has become very collectible and popular. And it's hand painted and it's got a lot of detail and it's just fun. And, you know, fun is a good reason to start collecting anything. And that's because that's what this really is all about. I talk about being a serious collector and how great it is to be around serious collectors, but the serious only is that we're serious about our stuff. The rest of it is playful, and that's what makes it great. I would say, you know, this is probably 1970s or 80s, and I would say that if you have this in a store, it's going to be a cat lover, which there's a lot of, and I would say, oh gosh, maybe $35, $40. So for $4, I think you had a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I'm keeping it.
Yeah.
It just makes me smile.
Yes. It's just so much fun. Now, yeah, you just don't let your cat near it.
He's old. He does.
Your cat doesn't bother things, yeah.
No, I'm lucky. So cute.
I learned the value of getting, well, out west where I'm from originally, they call it Quake Hold. This part of the country, they call it museum gel. And if you have animals or grandchildren coming over and there's something that's likely to get bumped, I highly recommend it because after my cats broke my $250 Chihuly vase, that would probably be worth $1,000 now. I bought it new back when they were still making them. I decided that I needed to do something, and I loved the cat enough to not want to get rid of it, so I put that under everything, and we had an earthquake a few years later, and nothing broke in a 7.0 earthquake. And I thought this was the best $6 I ever spent on anything in my life. So
your cat saved
the cat saved my stuff, so I forgave it. The cat also was the first one to know the earthquake was coming. I looked down and I said, "What's wrong with you?" He got all flat and got down and started crawling under the bed, and all of a sudden, boom, the first wave came. Wow. So yeah, they know.
I love cat. Aw. So my second item actually involves something you were just talking about. You mentioned Kate from Follow That Bug.
Yes.
And so I was watching a video of her at the Burner Brothers Mall. They were there at night riding around in what looked like golf carts, and all the lights were off, and they had a blue light.
Oh, yeah.
And they were just shining it. And I thought that was so much fun. So
it is.
I did it with my kids in my house.
Oh,
and this item that we've had for many years that was given, my husband's a physician, and he had a 98-year-old patient who just was so grateful for all the work he'd done with her, that she gave him this item that she had brought from Greece many, many years ago. And it's been sitting in my house. And my daughter hates it because she says it looks like an eye looking at her. And when I did the Kate from Follow That Bug thing, it was incredible. Watch it shine. Well, it came from Greece. I didn't know they even had glowy glass in Greece.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we don't think of Greece as being a place that makes things in the modern era, but they do. And yeah, this is an interesting piece, actually. I haven't seen a lot of this glass. GF is the company on there, and it is actually, though, let me read this label a little bit more. I'm not sure that this is made in Greece, to be honest with you. I think it's Italian.
Oh. Nice.
Yep.
Piece.
Sorry?
Mike just came through the door. I tried to say something.
Isn't that cool? Yeah. Yeah. No, it's Italian. It's Italian, and it's really fun. I would say it's probably 1980s, 90s vintage. I don't think it's wildly old, but it is a great color, and with the black light shining through it, yeah, it really pops. Yeah, well, it pops without the black light. And, yeah, you don't even need a black light to see that this glows. It's really cool. The size is good. The colors are good. I would say, you know, because this is especially popular right now, and it's interesting the way by the 80s and 90s, you start having paperweights that don't just sit flat. They also are beveled so they can be shown in other ways. I might expect to see 100 or 125 on this now, just because of the phenomenon of black lighting and everybody being so into it. It was so interesting to me to hear you say that they went around, because I didn't see that video where they went around with the black light. We did that years ago in the Antique Mall in Oregon. It was December. It got dark really early. We closed, and they said, hey, let's do the blacklight thing for George, because I was the general manager, so I wasn't in town very much. I was like, the blacklight thing. And they said, yeah, we do this about every 6 months after things have rotated. And they turned all the lights off, and we went through with blacklights and blacklighted everything. And we found lots of really neat things that glowed under a black light that we never expected. We also found that black lights are a great way to find cracks and repairs that are not disclosed, because they will refract differently. And so I ended up having to give a few things back to some dealers who were not very happy, because I said, this has been repaired and you need to put it on the tag, and they didn't know. Black lights are amazing for a whole lot of reasons other than just the fun that we're having with them now. The other thing the staff didn't like very well is I black lighted the bathroom, and it was like, you need to... It's like, we have a little cleaning to do here. So they never invited me to do the blacklight thing.
If you enjoyed this video, check out this one. Also, click thumbs up to like this video, and check the description for information about our Patreon, our memberships. We've got a lot of different levels with different perks and bonus videos and early content. Also, please do check out our website, theantiquenomad.com, for appraisal help. And we'll see you again for more adventures in the antique and vintage community soon. Bye for now.